Okay, so we all pretty much know the story, right? A young guy named Joseph, that amazing coat, his super jealous brothers, betrayal, and then this incredible rise to power in Egypt. It's a story that's fundamental to faith, forgiveness, and destiny. But that version, that's really just the beginning of the story of this story.
What if the version you've always known is only one branch of this huge narrative tree that's grown in ways you would never, ever expect? Because this one powerful tale isn't just a cornerstone of faith for billions in one book. Oh no.
That's right, the story of Joseph is, of course, a central narrative in the Bible's book of Genesis, but it's also the entire focus of a whole chapter, a surah, in the Quran, where he's known as the Prophet Yusuf. And that's a huge deal. We're not talking a brief mention. It's one of the very few stories told in such complete, head-to-toe detail in both sacred texts.
So before we get into the really wild differences, let's start on common ground. Because the beginning of this journey, well, it starts in a place that should sound remarkably familiar to everyone. Both scriptures lay out the same basic events that make up the backbone of the story we all think we know.
Yep, this all tracks. You've got the prophetic dream, the horrible betrayal by his brothers, being sold into slavery down in Egypt, and of course, his eventual climb to the top, all because of his incredible gift. On all these major plot points, Genesis and the Quran are totally in sync.
But like with any truly great story, the real magic is in the details. And it's in the small but crucial differences between these two versions that we start to see two completely different heroes emerge from the same tale. See, in Genesis, Joseph's whole deal is his wisdom, his ability to interpret dreams. It's an internal virtue, right? But the Quran, wow, it puts this massive emphasis on Yusuf's physical appearance. He's literally described as having been given half of all the beauty in the entire world. And this divine gift ends up being both a huge blessing and a major, major trial.
And that trial comes to a head in one of the most intense, dramatic scenes you'll find in either scripture, the moment his master's wife tries to seduce him. And it's right here that the two narratives take a very sharp turn away from each other.
The Quran sets this scene with just incredible cinematic tension. The wife of his master, Al-Aziz, literally bolts the doors, trapping him in a room with her, and makes her intentions crystal clear. For Joseph, a prophet of God, this is a truly impossible situation.
So he refuses. He immediately turns and makes a break for the door. In a moment of sheer desperation, she lunges for him, grabs his shirt from behind, and the fabric rips just as he's pulling away. And at that exact moment, who walks in? Her husband.
So now you have this classic, messy, he said, she said scenario. She immediately accuses Joseph of attacking her, while he, of course, insists he's innocent. So how do you figure out who's telling the truth? Well, that depends entirely on which book you're reading.
In Genesis, it's pretty cut and dried. Potiphar believes his wife, no questions asked. Joseph gets thrown in prison. End of story. But the Quran introduces this brilliant piece of logic. A witness in the household steps forward and says, hey, let's look at the shirt. If it's torn from the front, he was attacking her. But if it's torn from the back, that proves he was running away, and she's the one who's lying.
And check out this twist. This is so crucial. The husband sees the shirt. He sees it's torn from the back. He knows his wife is guilty. But to keep a public scandal from erupting and to protect the family's honor, they throw Yusuf in prison anyway. He is proven innocent, but he still pays the price.
But wait, the story is far from over. In fact, this is where it takes a turn that almost nobody sees coming. In both the Bible and the Quran, the wife's role pretty much ends right here. She's the villain, the temptress, and then she just vanishes from the story.
But what if I told you that for hundreds of millions of people, her story was really just getting started? That for centuries, a third version of this very same tale has been told, one that completely transforms the entire meaning of the narrative.
See, in the Islamic world, especially in Persian poetry, the story didn't end with a disgraced wife. Instead, it blossomed into this epic, sweeping spiritual romance known as Yusuf and Zulaikha.
In these incredible poems, the wife is finally given a name, Zulaikha, and her character is completely rehabilitated. She's no longer a simple villain. She becomes this tragic heroine, consumed by a love so intense that it's reinterpreted as a metaphor for the human soul's desperate, all-consuming search for the divine. So here it is, the absolute game changer. This is the completely different ending. While the Bible and the Quran have her exit the stage in shame, this poetic tradition gives her the most stunning redemption imaginable. After years of pining and suffering, God restores her youth and beauty, and she and Yusuf are finally, ultimately, married.
And look, this wasn't some obscure folk tale. The most famous, the most influential version of this epic romance was written way back in 1483 by the legendary Persian poet Jami. His version pretty much cemented this third mystical ending into the culture all across Persia, Turkey, and South Asia for centuries.
So, what does this all mean? We have this one single foundational story that leads to three profoundly different endings for its characters. It just goes to show you that stories, even the most sacred ones, aren't just static relics carved in stone.
And this matters, right? Because it shows us how a story can be a living, breathing thing. You have a shared narrative in Genesis and the Quran that goes down different paths to highlight different virtues. And then, a character like Zulaikha evolves over hundreds of years in art and poetry to explore totally new ideas about love, redemption, and our relationship with God.
This interpretation from that poetic tradition just captures the final transformation perfectly. The story of a worldly, sinful temptation becomes this beautiful, sublime allegory for spiritual seeking. What was once a sin becomes a symbol of the soul's highest calling.
And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating question, doesn't it? The next time you come across a story you think you know inside and out, it's worth asking yourself, is this really the only ending? Or is there another version, another tradition, another entire life for this story just waiting to be discovered?